Hello and happy European Day. I am Martin Goldstraw, one of the founding directors of the Armorial Register Ltd, a company formed in 2006 and registered in Scotland. Thank you for inviting me to give this talk. It's an absolute pleasure to be in Ireland, even if it is only digitally. I do have a confession and an apology to make before we start. In this talk, I have studiously avoided including any Gaelic Irish words, including names, that would involve me having to pronounce them. Although my recently undertaken DNA test informed me that I have a 2.3% Irish ancestry, I'm afraid that when it came down to it, the remaining 97.7% of my DNA being English meant that I just became tongue-tied and made a complete hash of it. In admitting my failure, I hope that I might be forgiven. Let us hope that my 2.3% is strong enough to keep me on the straight and narrow for the rest of this talk. For our talk today, which is about the design, assumption and registration of armorial bearings, I would like to divide our topic into three categories it naturally falls into. 1. The design of arms. All arms must start life by way of the design process. 2. The assumption of arms. I'll briefly touch on the rights of an individual to assume arms, which can depend upon the country of domicile. 3. The registration of armorial bearings. What might the benefits of registering your armorial bearings be? But first, it's teaching your grandmother to suck eggs time. What is an armiger? The Latin word armiger literally means arms bearer. In heraldry, an armiger is a person entitled to use an heraldic achievement, e.g. bear arms and arms bearer, either by hereditary right, by proven and typically agnatic descent from a person with a right to bear a heraldic achievement, a grant, matriculation or assumption of arms. Merely sharing the same surname or family name of an armiger does not qualify a person to claim a right to those arms. Today, the term armiger is well understood in many countries, especially where there is an heraldic authority, such as Canada, South Africa, the Republic of Ireland, the United Kingdom and most recently the Republic of Malta, where heraldry falls under some form of regulation or official recording by the state or an heraldic body, such as the Office of the Chief Herald of Ireland, the College of Arms, the Chief Herald of Canada, the Court of the Lord Lion, the South African Bureau of Heraldry, and even the fledgling Office of the Chief Herald of Arms of Malta. However, it's only in Scotland, under the supervision of the Lord Lion King of Arms, where the use of armorial bearings is strictly controlled by law, and the assumption of arms without the authority of the Lord Lion is forbidden. I ought to add here that there is a view that the College of Arms in London has a similar armorial mandate to that of the Lord Lion. However, debate on this continues, and the Court of Chivalry, the body charged with these matters, has fallen into desuetude, and it would appear that the College of Arms today is either unable or unwilling to prosecute someone who has assumed arms anew. Indeed, in 1984, Garter King of Arms declined to ask the Court of Chivalry to rule against the assumption of unauthorised arms by a local authority, doubting whether the precedents would give jurisdiction. And I quote from a New Dictionary of Heraldry 1987 by Stephen Fryer, page 63. The parts of this talk relating to the assumption of arms applies to those who reside anywhere other than Scotland, those parts of the world in the majority where one is free to assume arms. In this day and age, there should be no reason why anyone, no matter what their origin, could not assume their own armorial bearings where it is lawful to do so. Perhaps here I should say that I wish to make it clear that I do not seek to discourage those who reside in any of the countries that do have an heraldic authority from seeking a grant or registration from them. For those who reside in one of these countries, it's a matter of personal choice whether to petition for a grant or registration or to design and assume arms anew, Scotland of course excepted. Most of the world's population, however, does not have the luxury of such a choice and must therefore, if they wish to become armigerous, take the route of assumption. Remember, in the history of heraldry, no matter where you are in the world, the assumption of arms came long before there was any thought of regulation or the formation of an heraldic authority. You'll be in good company. So, you've decided that you want to assume your own armorial bearings. The first step is the design process. Know your limitations. You now need to consider how your arms are going to be designed. Are you going to go it alone? Seek the advice of others by way of obtaining amateur help, or pay a professional? It's not too onerous to truly do it yourself, but if you take that route, you'll need to do your homework first if you're not already familiar and reasonably well read in the subject of heraldry. Nowadays, there are many online heraldry forums whose members are only too pleased to help, but a word of caution: beware design by committee. It rarely works. There are many amateur organisations where a would-be armiger could turn to for free help. Many have a presence on Facebook and other social media sites. One of the most respected is the International Association of Amateur Heralds, a group of heraldic enthusiasts from around the world that exists to discuss all aspects of heraldry. One of the founding activities of the association is to service arms design requests by members of the public, and members continue to contribute towards the role of arms, which reflects the work of the association's heralds and heraldic artists. You can of course choose to pay a professional who will enter into a dialogue with you around what you might like. There are many professionals out there, and they vary from heraldry designers to heraldic artists of varying degrees of skill, and of course varying degrees of fees. The Armorial Register offers a basic design service with a basic image of the completed design. You are then free to commission a good artist should you wish. Both of our recommended artists are also competent heraldic designers in their own right. Other artists and design services are of course available. Your budget may not of course run to the best of the best heraldic artists, but at this stage it's probably the design that's of paramount importance. Once the design has been completed, albeit that it may have a very basic interpretation of your new arms, you can always commission a competent heraldic artist to produce that superb library painting at a later date. It really does depend upon your budget, but there are competent digital artists who can both design and create an excellent image for a reasonable fee. Reasonable, of course, being entirely subjective. By way of initial design guidance, I feel that I could do no better than quote from The Art of Heraldry by Carl Alexander von Volborth, Blandford Press, Dorset, 1987, page 218. In illustrating examples of von Volborth's advice, I apologise in advance for showing more than a few examples of very poor designs. There are countless examples of excellent self-designed arms, and later on I shall attempt to counterbalance any poor examples I've used with those that are more than acceptable. Make sure that the design is unique and does not infringe upon the rights of others. A coat of arms is personal property, and to have the same or similar name as an armiger does not mean that one is necessarily related to him and entitled to his arms or a version thereof. If your father's brother, for instance, assumed a coat of arms, this doesn't mean that you are entitled to use it unless he's made the necessary provisions. If someone cannot prove genealogically to descend from an armiger in the male line, he cannot use his arms. Back in December 2020, I saw this post on one of Facebook's many heraldic forums. but before I had a chance to respond, the original poster had disabled comments. It's a pity that the post wasn't removed altogether, because without comments it could be an encouragement to others to follow an example of complete bad practice. I've removed the details of the artist, but I should make it clear that although I have no criticism of the artistic and digital skills displayed in the image, I do feel that it ought to be the duty of an artist, when asked to undertake heraldic work such as this, to question what he's been asked to produce and, where possible, try to protect his client from criticism by pointing out the difficulties inherent in the commission. Here we clearly have an example of an artist who was pleased with the quality of his work and has posted it on Facebook in order to advertise his skills. Sadly, he encountered nothing but criticism. Where to begin? You see, here we have an example of the claim that the arms have been designed by the person commissioning the work, when all it seems to me that has been done is that this would-be armiger has pinched the arms of Redvers, Earl of Devon, and a few more with the same arms, for the 1st and 4th quarter, or a lion rampant azure, and those of Baron Brayborn, surnamed Natchbull, azure 3 crosses Fitchy between 2 benders, or for the 2nd and 3rd quarters. I have no idea who the would-be armiger is, but I'm pretty sure that he isn't entitled to the helm of a British knight or baronet. Perhaps he's courted these arms because he believes he's entitled to them, because somewhere in his history or genealogy there appears the surnames of Redvers and Natchbull, without fully understanding that arms don't belong to surnames. They belong to individuals and their direct male descendants. Either way, these arms are supposed to be a newly devised and assumed creation, so quarterings for newly devised arms would not be appropriate, let alone the usurpation of existing arms. Resuming the advice given by von Volborth, try to keep the design as simple as possible. Arms are still meant to be means of identification and representation and should be easily recognized and remembered. Crowded designs do not answer to this condition. On the left we see the arms of Zetec, a Romanian software web solutions company who almost a decade ago decided to celebrate the company's 10th anniversary by designing a new coat of arms. Over the years, heraldry has developed its own language used to perfectly describe each individual coat of arms, and we call that description blazon. From a written blazon, the artist is able to paint, or emblazon, the arms, and no matter how many different artists produce the image, they will all be heraldically the same. I'm not even going to bother attempting to blazon this monstrosity. By contrast, on the right we see the arms of Tony McCarthy, MA FGSI. You're probably very familiar with this achievement. The blazon or heraldic description for these arms is arms argent a stag tripant gules armed or, and upon a chief of the second his badge consisting of 2 sprigs of oak fructed proper, intertwined with a Hungerford knot, the ends accorded or. For crest, issuant from a rock or a tower masoned and embattled, displaying his badge banner, gules from a staff or. Mantling, dexter, gules doubled argent, and in the sinister, the tinctures reversed. Motto, roots nourish the tree. These arms were assumed on the 25th of October 2005. And the herald was the late George Lutschke of the International Association of Amateur Heralds and the artist Andrew Tully of the International Association of Amateur Heralds. Here we can see that not only are the arms simple, but they also reflect the generic or stem arms of McCarthy, whilst remaining unique. When designing your own arms, one of the basic design principles is ease of identification. I believe it is self-evident that as a flag, which is based on the design upon the shield only, flying from the top of your castle or semi-detached house, the McCarthy arms would be a lot easier to identify than the mishmash which would form the basis of the Zetec flag. Here I sneaked in a page from the book Heraldic Standards because it adequately illustrates several other heraldic banners. The one on the right shows that a heraldic banner displays only the charges upon the shield, although here the banner sits behind the crest of a stag's head upon the cross of Christ. These banners would be quite easily identified when flown from the top of a castle or used as a rallying point on a battlefield. Returning once again to the sage words of von Volborth, respect the ethnic background of your family and try to keep the new arms in the style of the country of your origin. If you are, for example, an American citizen having a German or a French name, don't use the heraldic style and charges which are characteristic for British or Italian heraldry. This is of course easier said than done, especially for the novice, as there can be very subtle differences such as style of helmet or style of mantling. Expert advice or some study of other arms from the country of your origin might assist here. Do not use badges of orders of chivalry as charges for your arms. This can be misleading. Should you be a member of such an order, you can show this outside the actual coat of arms. Do not use coronets, crowns or other objects that may have a particular meaning in the heraldry of the historical noblesse. Do not use supporters. They have a particular significance in heraldry and should not be assumed. Avoid everything that could be interpreted as misleading. This advice is especially pertinent to the vast majority of those who would seek to assume arms, whether they live in a republic or not. In heraldry, coronets and supporters generally mean rank titles, and let's face it, most of us don't have rank or titles. Pretty as they may be, don't fall into the trap of pretending to be something that you are not. On the left, we have an awful example of assumed arms. Let's set aside for the moment the titular claim, which isn't accepted, and the painfully obvious fact that a genuine barony of European antiquity would have arms which were more easily recognizable as being of genuine antiquity, and look at the arms themselves. I've no doubt that the soi-disant baron is very proud of his armorial bearings, but it is increasingly worrying that so many people who adopt and assume arms anew seem to be taking the advice of those who really ought not to be giving it. It's quite clear that whoever designed this particular coat of arms knew nothing about heraldry. This is an abominable example of bucket shop arms which shows no real understanding of the individual elements of armoury. The supporters are ridiculously small. I very much doubt whether the designer would understand the purpose of or even the term quartering. The motto has been replaced in the usual bucket shop way by the name, and the mantling, if that's what it is, has lost all relationship with the helmet and the torse and has become a sort of a background plantation growing out of the motto scroll. I can't think what the black radiating lines or wings behind the achievement are supposed to be, nor why the helm has horns growing out of the shoulders. I'm no expert on European heraldry, but I'm at a loss as to what Czechoslovakian tradition allows axes in saltire behind the shield. Why oh why, when there are so many free and informed resources such as the International Association of Amateur Heralds and the American Heraldry Society, to name but two, do people still design such abominations? On the right, by contrast, we see a hatchment painted by heraldic artist David Truzzi Franconi. The hatchment illustrates the arms of Hugh Cholmondeley, 6th Marquis of Cholmondeley, and his wife Lavinia Margaret Leslie. The dexter portion with the arms of Cholmondeley is shown with a black background to indicate that the 6th Marquis is deceased. David, who is well known to the English officers of arms, is an experienced and accomplished artist. The additament shown here of the coronet and supporters are, of course, legitimately born. In your choice of charges, you might search for symbols which express perhaps an occupation or profession that was or is characteristic for members of your family, for a pun on your name, canting arms, or for something relating to the place of origin of your family. There are innumerable possibilities to create a meaningful coat of arms. As for the tinctures, you could use your favourite colour combination, preferably limited to one colour and one metal, or the colours of your hometown or country. Charges like the rod of Aesculapius for physicians or the caduceus for merchants, for example, have been only too often used and are not very original. Try to avoid heraldic platitudes in a new design. A sailor doesn't have to use a whole ship. Oars, a sail, a boat, or a rudder would do the trick, and artisans could use the tools of their trade, preferably in their medieval form. Show the elements on the shield from the most recognizable angle. A hand seen from the side may be seen as meaningless, but palm outwards with spaces between the fingers, it is instantly identifiable. These are the arms of the Armorial Register Ltd, and although they were granted by the Lord Lion King of Arms and recorded in the Lord Lion's Register of all armorial bearings in Scotland, they were actually designed by my late colleague and I. Because our company was registered in Scotland, we couldn't simply assume them and had to petition the Lord Lion King of Arms for a grant. And we were pleased that our design was accepted as the basis for that grant. They are blazoned as arms azure within an awl of chains or, linking 8 escutcheons argent, an open book proper, 4 edges and binding or. Crest, a lion salient guardant or, the forelegs holding down a terrestrial globe proper. Motto, fulfilment by achievement. Granted by the Court of the Lord Lion on the 23rd of December 2013, the 69th folio of the 90th volume of the Public Register of all Arms and Bearings in Scotland. The thoughts behind the design are: for the arms, the predominant colours blue and white, or in heraldic language azure and argent, represent the home of the company, Scotland, with each escutcheon representing an entry in the register, all linked together to form the register itself, which is then published in book form as each volume is filled. For the crest, the lion is arguably the most recognisable of all the heraldic beasts, and here he's attempting to stretch his grasp around the world. The motto, fulfilment by achievement, is worthy in its own right as a corporate motto, but it also alludes to the fact that each volume of the register is added to achievement by achievement until it is ready, or fulfilled, for publication as a book. Before we move on to discuss why it might be wise to register your assumed arms, I thought I'd take a commercial break and show you some commercial or sports club arms that you might be familiar with. I have absolutely no desire to disparage the sports prowess of any of these clubs. I'm 100% sure that they all have dedicated supporters and that each one is capable of entertaining a crowd with their undoubted skills. I shall leave any sporting critique to those who know about these things. I do, however, feel qualified to comment upon their armorial bearings, or perhaps we really ought to say their logos, because each one of these images just about breaks every heraldic design rule there is. It's often stated that just because it happens to be on a shield doesn't make it heraldry. However, there is an argument that we ought not to be so dismissive of these pseudo coats of arms. If we are to avoid accusations of heraldry being an insular esoteric study undertaken by aging academics, and encourage the adoption of heraldry and coats of arms by a wider and hopefully much younger audience, then we should be wary of disparaging them. After all, these symbols are seen regularly by thousands of sports fans, and we should remind ourselves of one of the main functions of heraldry, that of identification. Now, although it might rightly be argued that had these organisations received the advice of the Chief Herald of Ireland, or at the very least someone who had read a heraldry book, the results would have better fitted an armorial criterion, they are undoubtedly still well recognised by their followers and are in fact regularly followed into combat, or perhaps I should say into competition. They are the rallying point for their faithful supporters or followers, and as such they are, arguably, heraldic in nature. So rather than criticise these logos or crests, as they're most likely erroneously known, let us encourage the individual followers of these sports clubs to explore the possibility of assuming their own arms, and in doing so guide them towards what we recognise as true heraldry, a heraldry available to all. By way of contrast, here's another coat of arms with which you will be very familiar, that of the Genealogical Society of Ireland, your own excellent society. Granted on the 5th of March 2001 by the Chief Herald of Ireland. The work of devising the GSI arms was carried out by Michael O'Camain, Consultant Herald at the Genealogical Office, and the painting by hand of the arms and letters patent on vellum was done by Philip Mackay, Herald painter from County Donegal. I am reliably informed that as much of the genealogist's work involves the examination of documents of various kinds, 2 scrolls in saltire were selected as the principal charge or element of the GSI shield. The scrolls are banded vert, as green is the colour particularly associated with Ireland. The tinctures or colours azure and or in today's language blue and gold, the colours of the state, are used on the shield, and there's also what the heralds describe as a borgia treffi, which is reminiscent of shamrocks, another patently Irish symbol. Because the use of a tree as an emblem by genealogical societies is so common, an effort was made in this case to devise an appropriate variation. In the event, taking account of the fact that the late O'Connor Don was closely associated with the society, it was decided to include a sprig of oak on the shield as a reference to the O'Connor arms. And beneath the shield is the motto, which I, with my 97.7% English portion of DNA, would just make a hash of if I attempted to pronounce, and I therefore humbly beg your forgiveness. It translates into English as "Remember our ancestors." In addition to the shield, the Society requested, and has been granted, a badge to be used by its members. The design here is a rope formed into a trefoil, which in heraldry is known as a Hungerford knot. In this case, the rope terminates in 2 acorns. Finally, the letters patent includes a banner, repeating the main elements of the shield. This is very much in keeping with the formula traditionally used in a grant of arms, which state that the arms may be used on shield or banner. This is a design that perfectly fulfills all the required design criteria, and, as you can see from the illustration, the banner would be easily identified from a distance. Here we have one example of granted civic arms in between 2 assumed coats, both of which you will be familiar with. Rory Stanley, FGSI 2009 to 2014. Arms, per fess density, in chief azure a stag's head caboshed or, the base parted per pale or and ermine. Crest, an arm embowed vested azure cuffed or, grasping a scroll proper, tied gules, and a shamrock slipped vert. Motto, De Stanley Abu, or Victory to Stanley, assumed on the 8th of December 2009, Herald Melvin Jeremiah of the IAAH and the artist Andrew Tully of the IAAH. And those are Stuart Rosenblatt, PC, FGSI 2014 to date. Arms, argent seme of golden temple menorah with candles aflame, 3 red roses in bend, barbed and seeded, all proper. Crest, from a torse argent and sanguine, in the centre of an interlaced Star of David, argent, fimbriated azure, a red rose barbed and seeded proper. Mantling, sanguine doubled argent. Motto, translated into English as Never Ever Again. And these were assumed on the 14th of May 2014, the Herald Jeff Kingman Sugars, IAAH, and the artist Lee Lumley, IAAH. As an example of good design, I've included this image of the letters patent of a grant of arms to Guy Hamilton Aitchison of County Wexlow, sold at auction on the 6th of December 2017 for the princely sum of £100. The new owner may well have been a Mr. Aitchison. Indeed, it would be nice to think that it is, and he is of course entitled to display his new purchase in his home. However, he can't claim the arms as his own unless he is directly descended in the male line from the original grantee, according to the law of arms. If he isn't descended from the original grantee, this design could be used to generate another similar but different design based upon the grant to lend the view that the new armiger is an Aitchison but is not related to the Guy Hamilton Aitchison of the grant. Putting the old letters patent side by side with a homemade and illustrated document of assumption would make a grand and honest display. Okay, so you've worked very hard and now you're an armiger. You have your very own coat of arms. But why register a coat of arms? Here I will speak of the services of the Armorial Register Ltd. Other services may of course be available, and the benefits of registration are universal. Whether your coat of arms has been granted by an heraldic authority, has been inherited, or you have assumed it anew, registration can have the following benefits. Registration ensures that the arms will be published in the Armorial Register's volumes, which are printed and deposited in the British Library and the other legal deposit libraries. All editions are available to purchase as an addition to your own family library. Legal deposit libraries include the Bodleian Library, Oxford University, the Cambridge University Library, the National Library of Scotland, the National Library of Wales, Trinity College Dublin, and the British Library. Registration allows a person or organisation to record and display their coat of arms in a publicly accessible online database, the International Register of Arms. Registration distinguishes inherited and original heraldic designs from those bogus surname coat of arms and family crest sites, which are so prolific on both online and in tourist destinations. A complete record of the International Register online database will be archived by British Library UK website archive www.webarchive.org.uk approximately twice every year. This means that a complete record of the website and all changes to its content will be recorded, thus building a permanent picture of the site's development and expanding content for years to come. Registration in our publicly searchable database can prevent others from unintentionally assuming the same coat of arms. Registration creates a document date certain for the use of the arms, which can settle disputes if someone should later claim the same design. All registrants will receive a simple certificate in PDF form and can also purchase an additional quality sealed certificate for framing. Registration allows the arms to be stored in standardized written form called a blazon, which stabilizes the design and allows it to be more easily preserved and transmitted, and to be found in an electronic search. The satisfaction of curiosity. How many times have we found an intriguing coat of arms and wondered what story was behind the design? Registered entries can include the design rationale and history of the arms, preserving the information for the public and future generations. Registration of a personal coat of arms in honour of a parent or grandparent creates an enduring memorial and a symbol of family identity to all the honorees' offspring. Those who have assumed arms can set down on record how they wish the arms to descend. Registration of non-personal arms helps promote the organisation's visibility on the internet. Here are just a couple of examples, screenshots, of entries in the online version of the Armorial Register. This and the previous slide are but two examples of over 670 entries so far in the register and still growing. We may well now be the largest online roll of contemporary armorial bearings, and the project continues to give us a great deal of pleasure. Perhaps here it would be appropriate to extend a huge thank you to all those who've contributed to the register, because not only is there a benefit to the armigers themselves, but there's also been a spin-off benefit to our wider readership. Our online register at www.armorialregister.com is free for all to view, and in creating the register we have been privileged to have been able to bring to the attention of our readers many armorial achievements which may well have remained private. Here are illustrations of the covers of our books. Volume 1, published in 2011, containing registrations 1 to 183, published in A4 sized hardback with 204 pages and 226 full colour images. The covers have been especially designed to reflect the brand of the Armorial Register. Volume 2 records registrations 184 to 366, published again in A4 hardback with 204 pages and 283 full colour images. Volume 3 records registrations 367 to 549 with 212 pages and 262 full colour images. We're still accepting entries for Volume 4, and details can be found on our website armorialregister.com. Copies of all our published books are deposited in the Bodleian Library, Oxford University, the Cambridge University Library, the National Library of Scotland, the National Library of Wales and Trinity College Dublin. The Armorial Register will, for a fee, undertake to work with the client to professionally design their own coat of arms, either to be assumed, in countries where armorial bearings may be assumed, or to form the basis of a petition for a grant or registration of arms from an official heraldic authority. As I've said previously, other design services are widely available. If you do wish to commission us to assist with designing new armorial bearings, we'll ask you to complete a short questionnaire so that we can get some ideas of what you might like before we begin the design process with you. Our basic fee includes liaison by email and the production of up to 5 basic digital images to assist with understanding what the finished design will eventually look like. We will explain along the way any heraldic rules or conventions which may affect the desired outcome, along with any appropriate heraldic terminology, and the final approved design will be provided with a complete blazon, a description in heraldic terms. Please contact us for further information and an individual quote on your requirements, as this may vary depending on the services we're asked to provide. Our email address is info@armorialregister.com. This is but a small selection of the many designs we have completed. For those who are permitted to assume armorial bearings, upon completion of the design process and as part of our initial fee, the arms will be recorded in our International Register of Arms, and we will issue a personalised registration certificate printed on high quality cotton sheet, which will provide longevity. This personalised certificate with the registrant's arms, blazon, date and registration number is embossed with the company's wafer seal and signed by the directors of the Armorial Register. The size of the certificate is A4, 297 by 210 mm or 11.7 inches by 8.25 inches. The Armorial Register is also able to provide design assistance and advice to those who wish to petition for armorial bearings from official heraldic authorities. For those who are unable to assume arms and require design guidance as part of an eventual petition to an official heraldic authority for a grant or registration of arms, registration in our International Register and the issue of the certificate will take place once the arms have been granted or recorded by the relevant authority. In bringing this talk to a close, I've previously referred to the excellent free design services of the International Association of Amateur Heralds, or IAAH. The current IAAH president, Chris Green, is a retired British diplomat living in Sweden. Chris recently gave his own opinion on the design of arms on the IAAH's Facebook forum, and he's given me permission to quote his words in this talk. I quote, "There is a significant difference between can and can't, and should, shouldn't. I can stand out in the rain for an hour without an umbrella. Should I? No. In heraldry one can do anything: shield shape, tinctures, charges, supporters, helm type, using arms granted to other people, you name it, one can do it. There's no worldwide heraldic authority. The few national heraldic authorities that do exist have limited or even no means of dealing with theft of arms. Witness the number of bucket shops, assumption of arms, or egregiously bad design by artists charging large sums for their work. Should I? That's a matter of opinion. And in heraldic circles opinion can vary significantly, both depending on the tradition to which one is used and general heraldic conventions. To take my own arms as an example, granted by the College of Arms in 1985, so 100% legal and in accordance with all heraldic conventions considered valid by English heralds. But now I live in Sweden, where the tincture rule is taken considerably more seriously. My martlets volant or are placed upon a field argent and azure, or on argent. No problem, or shock horror. My Swedish heraldic friends generously allow me that my arms pass muster, but deep down they aren't comfortable. But continuing the Swedish thoughts, there is no heraldic authority in Sweden except for official and civic heraldry. There is a register, but it has no official status and there is no requirement to register. One can simply assume arms. This situation is similar in many parts of the world. But should one simply go one's own way in heraldry simply because one can? My feeling is that if one is serious about heraldry, one is bound to follow its conventions as closely as possible, bearing in mind that these may vary from country to country. One should try hard to avoid designing or assuming arms that are the property of others, or which could reasonably be assumed to be the arms of well-known individuals or bodies. One should, above all, bear in mind that heraldrists can be unforgiving in their criticism of perceived bad or inappropriate heraldry. If you have been, thanks for listening.